That's the theme to Freeze Easy Peaks to bring in today's video. Saying a cappella. Not quite as good as the other bearded fuck who does that, but I tried. Today we're coming back with another Rareware title, Donkey Kong 64 Part 2. The scary half of the iceberg, if you will. We're checking out the last few layers of the Donkey Kong 64 iceberg. The other part went up about a month ago. If you did not see the first video, it will be linked below and also in the iceberg playlist. Regardless, let's go ahead and get started with layer 5. Keys 3 and 8 are the only necessary keys. Throughout Donkey Kong 64, you're working to help free this ex-criminal, Lumsy, who K. Rool actually locked up for just being a complete dumbass. He's locked up in this small prison boat off the side of Donkey Kong Island that expands to twice the size when the Kongs enter for some weird reason. Once you enter, you're face to face with a giant cage, and inside is Lumsy. After defeating each boss in the game, you collect a key that is used to unlock a lock on Lumsy's cage. After seeing another lock being unlocked on his huge cage, Lumsy will get super excited and shit himself, thus unlocking a new area on the island. 8 keys are needed in total to unlock Lumsy fully and unlock the end of the game, but actually you kind of only technically need 2 keys. Keys 3 and 8 are the only required keys technically, because these are the only ones that are used to destroy the Croc Cruiser before the final battle. Of course, since Lumsy unlocks a lot of the levels in the map, you can't progress super far without first unlocking Lumsy's locks on his cage with these keys, but by using glitches, you can actually get past these blocks in the road, making it possible to beat the game with only collecting 2 keys. I think this was definitely the 16-star route equivalent for Donkey Kong 64, and it's cool to know that when you grab all 8 over the 4,000-hour runtime, you actually only need 2 of the keys, and the game just wastes the rest of your time, and fucking for what? To unlock this big fucker right here? It's not worth it.
Guy sucks.
Negative emotional aura. I think this is a typical entry for most Nintendo 64 games nowadays, but I feel like Donkey Kong 64 really did have this negative emotional aura about it. I don't know, it could just be me. I get this feeling from the game for kind of 2 reasons. One is just I remember being frightened by this game as a kid because, you know, dumb kid, big game. But 2 is the actual scale of the game. The game has a lot of unique areas that are different from one another, but they all kind of still feel very empty. I think a great example of this is Gloomy Galleon. Most of the level is divided into large areas with water, but for some reason they are still enclosed, so the level gives off a weird feeling of claustrophobia mixed with the complete opposite of that, which is fear of the open water. I also feel like the game has a feeling of everything kind of being bombastic and almost orchestral. Take, for example, the large doors before the boss battle. Everything being way bigger than the Kongs. I mean, really, no wonder I got a feeling of uneasiness through most of the game. Uncollectible banana medals. The US version of Donkey Kong 64 was riddled with bugs. Rareware showed the finished game to Shigeru, and he claimed the US version should be damn near unplayable to get back at us for, you know, the bombs or whatever. And man, I don't know, he may have checkmated the entire United States with this one move because this copy is broken. One of the many soft locks that can be found in the game is near the ending, and it happens if you don't happen to collect all the necessary banana medals before shutting down K. Rool's big machine. You lose the ability to collect those much needed medals afterwards. I'm unsure if this is an actual soft lock, as I can't recall how many banana medals you need to beat the actual game, but if you don't want to test your luck there, you better collect them all before shutting down that big gun, clipping through doors. There are several glitches that allow players to advance in the game well before they should be able to. The one I remember most from my childhood is using Linky's long-ass arms to stretch his way past the banana toll guy. You could do this with most levels, and I specifically remember using this to get into Creepy Castle way before I had the bananas necessary to get past the banana guard. Banana guard. There are other skips and glitches in the game, and this iceberg goes into more specific ones that are kind of difficult to explain without actually doing them in the game. So I would recommend checking some of these entries out because the author goes into a little bit of detail on how to pull these off. Again, this is a broken ass game that we're dealing with here, so there's gonna be a lot of glitches and skips that you could use to finish the game way earlier. That's what we all really want to do at the end of the day, to stop playing it as soon as possible. Anti-piracy measures. By the time Donkey Kong 64 came out, cartridge ROM dumping was rampant, and Nintendo was prepared for this. If the ROM was ran and didn't detect a certain lockout chip, the game would then allow itself to randomly erase all the data at any given moment. This is kind of especially punishing in this game, as it won't specifically tell players that it knows you are playing a pirated copy, meaning you could make decent progress, all for it to go away the next time you turn on the game. This one's pretty shitty, but I actually covered a bunch of anti-piracy methods in video games in a 2-part iceberg series that are on my channel right now. If you're interested in anti-piracy in general, I'd recommend checking those out. Percent anomalies. The percentage meter on the main screen moves really slow, let's be honest. Collecting a measly gold banana here and there won't really raise your percentage that much. This is just due to how many collectibles are in the game. Near the 100% mark, the meter can start to get a little wonky. There are several numbers it can end up displaying that aren't 100%. There are reports of it displaying negative 124%, all the way up to 101%. And this is due to a pretty complicated algorithm in the code that just isn't well tested, I think. The fact you're able to plug in these entries into this code by just playing the game and it spits back incorrect percentage results is just a result of rush programming. It's not like as a player I can go into the code and input that I got negative 345 gold bananas and then try to see what happens to the percentage. It's able to fuck up just by me collecting what is needed to complete the game. So if you have more insight on these strange percent glitches, please feel free to leave a comment below. I usually try to pin comments that add context to the entries of the video. If you have some helpful advice, just leave it below. Layer 6. Creepy Castle Pillar. On the level Creepy Castle, there's a part in the level that is supposed to represent a museum of sorts. This part is accessible by Tiny Kong, and there's a room that seems like it was supposed to hold more than it actually does. Upon entering the room, you'll find that it only has a purple tin banana balloon for Tiny to get, but that's all there is. There is a large, uniquely designed pillar in the middle of the room that seems like it should contain something atop it, but it has no purpose. And this isn't the first time something like this has appeared. This really reminds me of the strange, unique assets found in the volcano in Mario 64. It seemed for a while that this pillar was just a mystery and no one had a solid answer. This went on for so long that rumors began to spread about what the pillar once held. From the beginning, many assumed it had something to do with the stop and swap feature that was removed from the game, as there was also another item known as the ice key that was eventually cut. As of about a month ago on a random forum, there was an update, kind of an official remark on the pillar as of this comment on this old GameFAQs post. It reads, "It was revealed in the German version of Donkey Kong 64's player guide that the pillar was originally meant to feature a golden Donkey Kong statue / trophy atop the pillar, which would fall in line with it being a display within the museum behind closed glass." I don't know the validity of this, as I don't know German or care to translate a Donkey Kong 64 strategy guide, so I'll take homie's word on this one. King Cutout, 4th phase. The bosses in Donkey Kong 64 are pretty cool and bombastic for the most part, but man, the boss for Creepy Castle is just fucking lame. It really is. Even when I saw this shit as a kid, I knew this was just lazy design. The boss is just an arts and craft project that makes it look like King K. Rool, and it's just controlled by a bunch of little kremlings. You're supposed to shoot the Kongs at each appendage of this cardboard K. Rool until you finish the battle, and there are usually 3 phases to this battle, but it appears there was supposed to be a 4th phase that was eventually cut. It's still accessible in the game, but there are no enemies that spawn and nothing can really happen when you shoot the cutout. Yeah, just like the boss, this entry was pretty fucking lame. Donkey Kong 64 Player's Guide. This entry doesn't actually refer to a real-life Donkey Kong 64 player guide, although a creepypasta about a demon figure appearing inside of the Donkey Kong 64 Player's Guide would have totally blown up in 2011. Instead, this entry refers to a strange texture that is present in the game but is never actually visible in the game. The books in the library of Creepy Castle fly by at fast speeds, and when you slow it down and enhance the image like CSI...
Wait. Go back one.
What do you say?
Bring his face up. Full screen.
You may have a witness.
We can see that the book title reads DK64 Player's Guide. This is a cool little Easter egg that would have probably never been seen in the real game if not for going into the code and digging this out. I like to think that the game developers put this in because they even knew how complicated their game was, so They just straight up were throwing the guide straight at the Kongs. Gloomy Galleon shipwreck contents are pristine. As mentioned before, Gloomy Galleon is already a place that creeps me out. When you're actually faced with getting a few GBs here, you will likely have to go diving for them. There are a bunch of sunken ships that litter the seafloor of Gloomy Galleon, and there's a bunch of ways to get into most of them. I gotta say, the atmosphere inside these ships brings the creepiness to a whole other level. As you explore the tight corners of the sunken ship, you'll start to see the furniture. You might even find a painting of Captain K. Rool of Donkey Kong Country 2. Finding this painting has kind of led me to believe that these are the sunken fleets of the ships that Diddy and Dixie destroyed in Donkey Kong Country 2, and now years later you return to the aftermath to find nothing but death and despair. It's not all bad though, because before the ships went down, Captain K. Rool covered all the furniture in the ships in that stupid plastic that people cover their couches in. So now they're left pristine while the rest of the ship continues to decay under the harsh pressures of the water. Captain K. Rool never knew the comfort of a real couch without a plastic cover, and he'd be damned if his shipmates would either. It is pretty weird how most of the ship's furniture is in perfect condition, but I don't know, I guess you get what you pay for. Layer 7. Dixie Kong in Donkey Kong 64. Of course, Donkey Kong 64 had to have its L is real moment. For this game, the rumored 6th Kong was supposed to be Dixie Kong from the Donkey Kong Country series. I always thought it was kind of odd that they replaced Dixie with Tiny Kong, but when you think of the way Dixie Kong ran in the Donkey Kong Country games, I think I kind of know why. Let's just say we wouldn't be able to focus, we wouldn't be able to change the characters out. I already had a hard time giving up on my gaze of DK's apple bottom, dude. You think you're getting Dixie Kong in here? Swaying my eyes back and forth. Of course, players began to rumor that they had found Dixie Kong in Donkey Kong 64, but alas, it was never true. And to be honest, I can't even find a convincing image online of somebody faking it, so it seems like the rumor never had much for legs. Although I do have a mock-up somebody made for how Dixie would look in Donkey Kong 64, so there's that. Hope you enjoy that. Hope you print that out, put it up on your wall. Kong exit doors. Early in the development of Donkey Kong 64, the devs originally had each Kong use a separate entrance for the boss fight of the level. This was likely used where the boss door would have had like Diddy's face on it if the boss fight was meant for Diddy and the other Kongs couldn't use it or some shit. This can be further proven by the point that wrinkly doors are referred to as exit in some of the codes in the game. These are probably going to be used as the entrance / exit for the boss room, and they just reuse the asset for Wrinkly Kong's doors. I think the idea of Trough and Scoff was better than a simple entrance and exit to the boss, as it made things feel more uniform. This was also likely before they had the banana requirement for entering the boss door. I can't imagine not throwing the banana straight into that hippo's mouth or pig's mouth. I forget how they're lined up. Jesus. Chinese depression. I have no idea what this one's referring to, but I'm going to use some context clues here. I think I have a few theories as to what's going on here. In the player guide, Tiny Kong is referred to as Dixie's very little sister, and throughout the game her small size is mentioned and even used in her moveset. Perhaps this has been weighing on her and she feels depressed at her physical stature throughout the game of Donkey Kong 64. This is just surface level though, because this theory runs deeper when we consider the fact that she returned in Mario Super Sluggers and a few other games, where she was a lot taller than she had appeared in Donkey Kong 64. There was never an official statement as to why this change was made, but perhaps it was just to have a character who was taller be called Tiny for the meme of it. There is a theory online that I subscribe to more though. After helping the Banana Fairy find all of her fairies, the Banana Fairy grants Tiny Kong one wish, and Tiny Kong makes the wish to grow older into a more reformed version of herself, a taller version. That's why some time passes, we finally see her again, easily 6'5", could dunk on a bro, yet she's out there playing baseball. But hey, at least she looks happier nowadays, right? This depression could also refer to the fact that she just looks like she has a resting bitch face 24/7. Like, cheer up, bitch, you get to fly. Diddy Kong has to strap on actual rockets to do that. You can just whip them tails out and fly on a bitch. The Blast-o-matic destroys save data. The whole time you played DK64, you were technically at risk of being fired upon by K. Rool's big ship gun hybrid. However, it isn't fully completed yet, and K. Rool needs more time before he can fire the weapon at DK Island, destroying the Kongs forever. Therefore, the gun doesn't really become a real threat until the end of the game when you enter Hideout Helm. This is where those pesky blueprints come into play from Snide. Depending on how many blueprints you have will correspond with how long you have to deactivate this big ass gun. For a while, it was actually believed that failure to shut the gun down would result in the game erasing your entire save data and starting at the beginning all over again. I think this was a big enough risk for most people to collect all the blueprints just in case the rumor was true, because fuck that. However, it simply just results in a game over screen with a unique cutscene of K. Rool firing up the gun. That would be quite the punishment though. Imagine if the developers put that in the game. Like, considering this is a kids game that is already pretty insanely complicated, I really don't think this would have worked. The big sawmill in the sky. B-Locker is the gate guy that blocks the entrances to the level. He's a son of a bitch and is usually an asshole towards the Kongs, especially when you don't have the necessary banana amount. However, a piece of his dialogue that had players scratching their heads was one of the first encounters players have with him. He states he doesn't want to visit the big windmill in the sky. This actually perplexed players for a while because it could have been referring to a secret level or Easter egg or something in the game. Considering that the entrance to Fungi Forest takes place in a shed on an island in the sky, it could be referring to that. More likely though, this is just a saying like when a dog dies, it goes to the big park in the sky, referring to heaven of sorts. But instead of heaven and dogs, it's a plank of wood with a banana ticker on them. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think they'll have the space for them in the big sawmill in the sky. So your boy's definitely getting wood chipped. Man, that's fucked up. Donkey Kong is locked at the start. Throughout Donkey Kong 64, you'll start making a habit of unlocking your friends from the cages that K. Rool threw them in. Before you unlock them, they will be represented by a colored question mark in the tag barrel. Ironically, the character you start the game with has a yellow question mark indicating that they were going to be unlockable in the game. Yes, this character is Donkey Kong. This can still be seen in the actual game itself, but it requires hacking, as when you slam the first Donkey Kong switch at the entrance of Donkey Kong Island, technically unlocks Donkey Kong, making it impossible for the player to ever see DK's yellow question mark indicator in the tag barrel. But it's still really weird that this was even included in the final game itself. It does kind of seem like an afterthought and was just kept in anyway because, well, nobody should ever be able to see this. But I think I actually have a better theory. I actually think the reason was because you were supposed to start the game as Cranky Kong, cooking meth a la Breaking Bad. And after finishing a batch, you bring some to Donkey Kong to sling, and then you unlock Donkey Kong like that. It fell apart at the second half. I'm sorry. Layer 8. Modes 4 and 8. Donkey Kong 64 is segmented into sections known as modes. There are a total of 13 modes in the game that are tied to things like cutscenes. For example, Mode 9 contains the game's Game Over screen. One thing that is interesting to notice is that there are 2 missing modes. While there are 13 modes in total, they are numbered up to 15, with 4 and 8 missing. Who knows what these modes could have been and what they could have contained. If I had to make my best educated guess, with everything I've learned so far, I'd say Mode 4 contained a shot-for-shot remake of GTA Vice City and the Donkey Kong 64 engine. And in Mode 8, you play as Donkey Kong's skeleton and you're trying to escape the Valley of the Damned, a la Dante's Inferno. I don't know, what do you guys think? The entire Mario franchise is inside Creepy Castle. Dude, I don't even know where to begin with this one. I know some of the times the creators of the list find the video, so hey, person who made this, if you want to explain this one, maybe in the comments below, I would love an actual explanation. But again, using my best educated guess, Creepy Castle is a strange stage that has many environments that I don't feel like they'd really fit in a Donkey Kong game, but I never really felt like these were Mario-esque scenes. If I had to surmise it, I suppose this is a theory that Mario as a franchise, as a whole, Mario Kart included, takes place in the level from Donkey Kong 64's Creepy Castle. I really couldn't even find a wild rampant theory on some random thread from 2009 about this, so I'm purely going off the dome right now. So here's my guess. It may have something to do with these mushroom guys, but they don't even appear in this level, so I really don't know. If you can think of any other ways this could be a valid theory, let me know in the comments below. The US version is intentionally broken. By now we know Donkey Kong 64 isn't the most complete game on the market, and this was especially true for the version that was released in the US. This theory is likely due to the number of unique bugs that only exist in the US version, and aren't present in the other PAL and Japanese releases. Why would they do this purposely though? Was it direct orders from Miyamoto to intentionally bug the code of the US ROMs? Wait, maybe my theory about the bombs was true the whole time. More than likely though, the buggy release was due to a number of things adding up to make the game damn near broken on a release. For example, the use of the expansion pack already makes this game so much more prone to bugs, not to mention that the game is so large, it has so much to store in data. Leaks are gonna happen. It's so big, it would almost be weird if this game didn't experience any bugs when it was released. This was by far the biggest game of that year, and for it to be as playable as it was is pretty impressive. Too bad the game is a snooze fest. The 1995 build is a cover-up. If you aren't familiar, there was a rumored build of Super Mario 64 that is referred to as the July 29th, 1995 build. This build was suspected to have implemented secret advanced tech that infected the game's AI and created personalized copies of the game for every copy sold. This build was reported to have been playtested, and many of the playtesters recorded health issues due to seizures caused from the bright flashing lights and warping textures. This doesn't even really scratch the surface of what was possible with this build, and many believe that this build actually existed at one point in time. It is even discouraged heavily by some to research the build because the results could be deadly. But what if I told you all this was fake, but not fake for your typical internet fame reasons, but for something much more sinister? Super Mario 64 was the scapegoat for this tech, and this entry aims to expose the true 1995 build. The build was never used for Super Mario 64. Of course, this explains all the weird feelings, the negative auras, everything I've been talking about through these videos. It was never thalassophobia. It was my personalized copy of Donkey Kong 64. Everything I experienced by myself. Everyone's journey through Donkey Kong 64 was unique. This just popped in my head. For example, at the end of my game, instead of fighting that stupid ass final boss fight, the game just cuts off right after Frantic Factory like The Sopranos, and I get 20 more hours back of my life I would have lost playing this game you play to fall asleep at night. Holy shit. How do banana porters really work? The teleporters in Donkey Kong 64 are known as banana porters because you get zipped up into a banana and teleport to another port pad. But how does this actually work? Some speculate that the Donkey Kong universe has advanced so quickly that technology advanced past human evolution, and now apes have the ability to teleport using banana skins. But what is more likely is the fact that Donkey Kong Island is actually located at the center of the earth, in its core. And this is why this type of technology is possible. It has something to do with the electric waves that take place in the earth's core. This allows the banana peels to obtain teleportation powers, and Donkey Kong and friends were just lucky enough to utilize it to save us all a bunch of time. Thanks, Kongs. DK64 is a life-changing experience. I don't know if I would particularly agree with this entry. This one at the end of the day is just an opinion after all, and I don't really know if my life would be different had I not experienced this game at a young age. Is Donkey Kong 64 like discovering a new food? Or is it more sinister, like the first time you smoke a ciggy? A quick relief now, but death in the long run. I think as time passes, Donkey Kong 64 will go through many phases. Right now, everybody fucking hates the game, and I get it. Give people a little bit of time, and I think they'll start to appreciate the unique things the game has to offer. Here, I'll throw this enemy up just to remind you what we're talking about here. This enemy doesn't appear too often in the game, and it's entirely unique to Donkey Kong 64. I think this enemy encapsulates a lot of my feelings towards Donkey Kong 64. I always forget this enemy exists, and I will for the rest of my life. I will never remember this guy day to day. But when I see this guy again, I'm flooded with memories of Donkey Kong 64. And I think the same thing can be said for the game as a whole itself. I'm not always thinking about this stupid ass fucking stupid game, but when I see the yellow cartridge, I get flooded with just some great memories, man. So I guess in a way it is a little bit life-changing for me, but definitely not in the same way that other games, even in the same series, were life-changing to me. K. Rool's government is a cover-up for Xi Jinping's regime. Say that 5 times fast, fuckers. Let's end off with a silly one, alright? King K. Rool has seen a lot of different roles in the Donkey Kong series, and in all of them, he can be seen as a cruel leader to most, not caring how many crocs die in order to achieve his goal, which is usually blowing something up. I mean, the whole story of Donkey Kong 64, it really feels eerily similar to real-world events. But in the interest of saving my ass later in life, when New America is formed under Chinese rule, I will end my video here, no longer drawing any more comparisons to the Chinese government and Donkey Kong 64. And that's it. Goodbye. That is the end of the Donkey Kong 64 iceberg. I skipped a few entries here and there. Again, if you want to see the full iceberg, there are some cool entries about glitches you can do in the game. But I think overall this covered a lot of the interesting stuff that was under the hood of this old beater known as Donkey Kong 64. I think we can all throw the cover over it, drive it back into the garage, forget about it for another few years until it's time to crank it up again. Let's hope it cranks up this time and doesn't sputter out. If you guys enjoyed this, make sure to leave a like. I will be back with another iceberg soon enough. If you have suggestions for icebergs, leave them down below. I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.